Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We are privileged to be together here today. It is just after 4 o'clock in the afternoon. If we could travel back in time 70 years right now, we would see a city 8 hours after the end of the world. How compelling it is that the threat of what happened here still hangs over us all. This session, Actions for Nuclear Disarmament, remind us of the urgency of our common task. These remarks are entitled, What is Required of Us? I will speak of us as 3 concentric circles. The first circle is one's own identity and faith. The second circle includes other identities and religions. And the third is all of humanity. If the circles are concentric, how does what nuclear disarmament requires of me as a Christian compare with what nuclear disarmament requires of you as a Buddhist, a Muslim, a Hindu, or a Jew? The first thing that is required of us is to live the courage of our convictions. The World Council of Churches' conviction is that the world must be freed of nuclear weapons. For us, 2 fundamental positions have emerged. The first position was articulated not long after the city was destroyed, when WCC was founded in 1948. The young WCC adopted a broad rejection of war and armed violence in the modern era, predicated on the international rule of law. The second basic position has emerged slowly over much decade. Churches have come to recognize that working for peace constitutes a primary expression of Christian responsibility in the world. We are challenged to move beyond rhetorical denunciation of violence and injustice and incarnate our ethical judgment into actions that contribute to a culture of peace. We believe that this responsibility for action is grounded in the goodness of all that God has created and in the essential goodness of all of humanity by virtue of being made in God's image. The WCC's approach to nuclear weapons draws on this foundation. We reject nuclear weapons categorically as a challenge to all humanity. Our conviction about nuclear weapons are tested regularly. In 2013, the Assembly of World Council of Churches took place here in Northeast Asia, a region where nuclear explosion, accident, threat have taken heavy toll. Northeast Asia is the only place on earth where nuclear weapons have been used in warfare. All states in the region either possess nuclear weapons today or depend on the nuclear arsenal of the United States. People from this region influenced the assembly. Living close to nuclear power plant and inside the target zones of opposing nuclear forces, they called for replacing nuclear power here as a step toward sustainable development and eliminating nuclear weapons as a step toward peace. The World Council of Churches took up their call. The WCC believes that nuclear weapons cannot be reconciled with real peace. If 100 bombs like the one used against Hiroshima were used on cities today, soot from the incinerated cities would disrupt the global climate and agriculture so severely that up to 2 billion people could perish. It is our conviction that the only way to ensure that nuclear weapons are never used again is to eliminate the weapons themselves. We listen when the Hibakusha of Hiroshima as well as of Fukushima bear witness in the hope that no one else will ever suffer their fate. We are convinced that we must listen to these witnesses as Christians and make their witness our own. We are convinced that using the energy of atom in ways that threaten and destroy life is a simple misuse of God's creation. Living the courage of conviction in this field requires us to reflect and act, to pursue peace and pray, to fulfill civic duties as well as religious ceremonies. Let us all refuse to accept that the mass destruction of other peoples can be a legitimate form of protection for ourselves. Surely this must be our common article of faith. The second thing that is required of us is to translate our beliefs into focused action implemented with others. Amid all the wars and armed violence of the past century, new humanitarian norms have been built to ban chemical and biological weapons of mass destruction, laser weapons, and landmines, etc. Achieving a similar humanitarian ban on the world's deadliest weapon will not be easy. Yet, let's believe that it will not be impossible either. Progress is clearly being made, and we all need to play our part. Government, international organization, civil society campaign, and religious networks are collectively delegitimizing nuclear weapons because of their health, humanitarian, and environmental consequences. We must act on the fact that our own fate is linked to the fate of others as never before in human history. In the 2 years leading up to this 70th anniversary, a series of global conferences on the humanitarian impact of nuclear weapons have made that imperative clear in new ways. The conferences help to narrow the gaps between what is commonly known about nuclear weapons, their actual effect, and the societal condemnation they deserve. Now more and more states without nuclear weapons and more groups in society are standing up for their obligation to eliminate nuclear weapons. Participation in the humanitarian impact conferences has grown from 124 states to 158 states. In May this year, 159 governments declared it is in the interest of the very survival of humanity that nuclear weapons are never used again under any circumstances. All other weapons of mass destruction have been banned, yet the most destructive of all weapons, nuclear weapons, has not been banned. Closing this legal gap is the next logical step. Fortunately, a new humanitarian pledge is providing a pathway so that solution-minded states can join in closing that gap together. The pledge calls on all states to fill the legal gap for the prohibition and elimination of nuclear weapons. 112 states have now endorsed it. All governments, including yours and mine, must be urged and urged again to do the same. What is required of us comes into sharp focus here. The basic factor mobilizing so many different sectors of society is the unacceptable impact of nuclear weapons on people and the planet. UN agencies responsible for health, development, human rights, migration, weather, and disaster relief are all contributing. Climatologists, physicians, gender researchers, and agronomists and emergency officials are all giving evidence. So are philosophers, ethicists, and religious leaders. The door is open for many more us to share the courage of our convictions. What is required is for religious leaders to provide leadership and for people of faith from every walk of life to take action. Nuclear disarmament now requires us to focus faith, ethics, and morality on the need for new international law. That law is a legal ban on nuclear weapons, achieved with widest possible international backing. From experience in mobilizing member churches in 140 countries, the World Council of Churches is convinced of the importance of the world religions working at different levels. First, work within our own religion. We find that mobilizing our own membership is a prerequisite for whatever success we may achieve and also for contributing to wider successes. Second, we must work with other religions. We all do this, of course, but couldn't we do more? Third, work with the civil society organization. Much more of this cooperation is possible nationally and locally. We have seen that when religious communities have global leadership and also work with partners in their own society, faith-based advocacy takes on new power, and religious groups gain new access to their government. 2 years ago, when our goal in every region was an effective global arms trade treaty, churches in 50 countries engaged their government. Finally, uniting with others in focused action requires us to work with the government. There is a good chance your government is part of the world majority opposed to nuclear weapons. They need your support to stay on the right path. Approach them as part of the growing global majority. The international campaign to abolish nuclear weapons has members in 95 countries. 112 countries have now signed the humanitarian pledge. 115 countries are part of nuclear weapons-free zones. 156 countries do not rely on nuclear weapons. 159 countries support the just statement saying never again to nuclear weapons. 187 countries do not have nuclear weapons. Only 9 countries do. I would like to point out that the WC's delegation here is part of this political arithmetic. The delegation comes from 2 countries with nuclear weapons, the United States and Pakistan, and from 5 countries that support nuclear disarmament but continue to accept protection from nuclear weapons. Our plan after this important anniversary is to go home to talk with our government about what we are learning in these 2 cities, to ask why 70 years after Hiroshima and Nagasaki, our own government is still prepared to destroy hundreds of cities in similar fashion, and to urge them to join the humanitarian pledge. To live the courage of our convictions and to unite in forced action with others, it is essential that we become servants of the common good. Global solutions require realignment of local, national, international actions with the common good. Working for the advantage of everyone is therefore not only right, it is necessary, probably imperative. The imperative of our era is to act on the fact that our own fate is linked to the fate of others. The humanitarian initiative against nuclear weapons highlights that challenge. So does the debate of the curbing climate change. With nuclear weapons, as with climate change, the world is coming to realize that in the end, unless all of life is protected, no lives are truly safe. Instead of acting as if both problems are insoluble, the international community could treat nuclear disarmament as a training for the rather more complex, widespread, and long-term challenges associated with climate change. The point of encouraging our government to join the humanitarian pledge is to create a platform that consolidates and empowers the global majority to establish a legal ban against nuclear weapons. Nuclear-free world is possible. Banning nuclear arms is an essential step to the goal that is 70 years overdue. What are our actions for nuclear disarmament now? Make sure each of our government has endorsed the humanitarian pledge. Urge them to support a majority-led ban on nuclear weapons. If your government does not agree, keep asking and help them to understand the majority goal. This path to human security and peace is one that all must share. Let us all live the courage of our convictions. Unite with others in focused action and serve the common good. Thank you for your listening.